Making the polluters pay. That's the aim of the Ecocide Prevention Bill that's being brought forward by Labour MSP Monica Lennon. If it becomes law, senior executives of companies responsible for inflicting major environmental damage on Scottish soil could face up to 20 years behind bars. Well, Monica Lennon joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Gary.
During the lifetime of the Scottish Parliament, it's not been slow to pass environmental legislation. Why do we need more?
Well, this is introducing criminal law, and ecocide law is now becoming normal around the world. And recently the EU passed a directive, so member states of the European Union are now bringing ecocide law into their national frameworks. So it's about Scotland trying to keep up with the rest of the world in a way, but we could be the first in the UK to do this. And since I consulted last year, there's been a lot of development around the world. So it has been quite hard to keep up with that. But in Scotland, there is strong public support for this.
And support in the Parliament now too.
There's support in the Parliament, and yesterday, I think around 30 MSPs backed it. I checked this morning on the Parliament website, and it's up to 43. So people are emailing their MSPs, they're asking them to support this. And there's been a lot of time taken by colleagues. MSPs have not rushed into it because, as you've said, the sanctions are quite serious and up to 20 years in prison and major fines for polluters.
And what specifically would trigger? What would specifically trigger those sanctions? Would it be deliberate pollution or even accidental pollution?
So if I get the right to introduce the bill, we'll draft the bill in the new year and we'll start to work through the detail. But going back to the consultation, I did give some examples of looking back into the past. What is an example of ecocide? One of the scenarios that we outlined was the Bray oil spill in Shetland, where 85,000 tonnes of crude oil devastated the environment and destroyed ecosystems. So, we're not going back in time to prosecute people, but it's trying to give examples. What I haven't done is given a list of this as ecocide, because what we want to try and get into the law is the actual impact of the crime. So if it's causing severe harm that is widespread, perhaps long-term and perhaps even irreversible, we're talking about the destruction of ecosystems. So it's not minor acts of pollution, although we want to try and deter that also. But what we've seen around the world is that big corporations are quite happy to break the law because the sanctions are really paltry. They get a small fine, or even when it's a couple of £1 million, some of these multi-million companies carry on doing that. So the reputational damage that comes with being accused of ecocide, we really believe that will change behaviours at the highest level, and that's why countries around the world are now doing this.
Well, you mentioned countries around the world, similar legislation being introduced, Belgium, for instance, but is it being successfully enforced?
It's quite early days, actually. The legislation in Belgium is still quite new. And, I think there's two aspects to this. The draft name of my bill is Ecocide Prevention. So we really want to put polluters on notice and say, change your corporate practices, change your behaviours, do better, because this is coming. But if we do get cases that have to be prosecuted, that definitely are in the realms of ecocide, and we need there to be suitable punishments. And when you look at this consultation, there are hundreds of organisations who have responded, including, for example, the Scottish Wildlife Trust, who want to see these sanctions. But I have to be honest, there are concerns about enforcement and resources. So when I meet the Scottish Government, and I'm meeting them later today, we will have that conversation about how do we ensure that we invest in our public services so that if we do get complaints about pollution, or we do get whistleblowers tipping off the authorities, that we have the correct people to do the investigation and our courts are adequately resourced. I think that's a really vital part of the jigsaw.